Good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of our annual seminar for teachers. Buenos Aires Open Center Annual Seminar for Teachers 2020. Well, for those of you who heard us for the first time today, I'm Monica Marenzi, Buenos Aires Open Center Senior Academic Consultant. And we are very happy to share this event with all of you. And congratulations once again on the hard work that you are doing teaching English in these challenging times. A recorded version I hope I'm back again, but I was you that a recorded version of these webinars will be available for 7 days. You can use the chat to ask questions and we will try to answer as many as possible. Now, I would like to introduce Belén Salituri, who will be giving you some top tips on how to get ready for the exam day. Belén is a graduate teacher of English from Instituto de Enseñanza Superior en Lenguas Vivas, Juan Ramón Fernández, where she was a teaching assistant in Phonetics 1 and Diction for 4 years. She has trained students for B2 First and C1 Advanced for several years, and she's now an academic consultant for Buenos Aires Open Center. She also holds a degree in journalism from TEA. And Belén has also been an invigilator for Buenos Aires Open Center for a number of years. So welcome, Belén.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you so much. So now I'm going to switch to the presentation. All right, I think there we have it on screen, so that's perfect. As Monica was saying, today's session is going to be about some top tips on how to get ready for the exam day. These are not going to be tips on whether you need to use this book or another book, okay? It's going to be more of a session and tips on the mechanics of the day of exam. All right, so we're going to focus on how to complete the answer sheet, or does the exam have an answer sheet or not? Okay, do I need to use a pen or a pencil? All right, can I bring this to the day of exam? Is this allowed or not? So we're going to focus on those things that maybe we need a little bit of revision, okay? So we can tell our students and they can arrive at the day of exam with a lot of confidence, okay? So if you're ready, please type yes in the chat box and we will get started, okay? And I will show you what we're going to discuss today. So on today's webinar, I divided into 5 sections, okay? So the first one is about certain things that I would like you to remind your students, okay? You know, some little tips over here and there, okay? Of things that are very, very important and we need to keep in mind of these things, okay? The second section, I named it allowed or not allowed. That is the question, okay? Because we always have this doubt of whether this item is allowed or not. So we're going to see what can be in the exam day and what can't be there. Then if you teach starters, movers, and flyers, I'm going to give you some little tips for the little ones, okay? And sections 4 and 5, these are going to be for the rest of the exams, key, preliminary, first, advanced, and proficiency. Section 4 will be about listening, okay? And I'm only going to say this twice, and that's a reference to the fact that we listen to each recording twice, okay? So I'm already giving you a hint of the things that we're going to discuss. And our last section is about these 2 best friends forever, the question paper and the answer sheet, okay? That, like all best friends, have differences, okay? So we're going to focus on those, on the difference between the question paper and the answer sheet. So we'll begin with these things that I would like you to remind your students. So the first one is to be punctual. I know it's kind of obvious, okay, this thing that I'm telling you, to be punctual, but it's good if you remind this to your students, and not only to your students, but their families as well, okay? Especially if we're working with kids and adolescents, all right? So remind their families to be punctual. We always tell this from Buenos Aires Open Center, to arrive at the exam venue at least, okay, at least 15 minutes before the start of the exam, okay? We're not saying an hour and a half before the start, but at least 15 minutes, okay? So you can be on time, the exam can start on time, and students don't get nervous and they're not in a rush, okay, to get there. So please be punctual. Tell this to your students. Then remind them to remain silent inside the exam venue. It's an exam day, so it's important to be respectful of other candidates who are taking the exam, okay? We might have some fast finishers, who leave the exam room and then they go to the waiting room. So it's important that they are quiet, okay? If they want to ask something or talk with someone, they have to do it in a very low voice, so the volume does not increase, okay? Imagine many people talking at the same time in their normal voices, in the normal volume of their voice, it gets really loud. So it's important, just for respect, to remain silent inside the exam venue, okay? There are a lot of signs, okay, quiet signs inside the exam rooms and the waiting rooms, but it's important that if you as teachers can tell this to your students. Then something that it's important to remind students is that there will be assigned a candidate number. And this candidate number, they already have it when they receive the confirmation of entry, okay? So they have their candidate number beforehand. So why are we suggesting that you tell your students that they should know about the candidate number? Because it's going to be their identity throughout the day of the exam, okay? According to that candidate number, they will be assigned a room, they will be seated according to that number, okay? They will have to write it in the question paper. So it's important that they identify that number and they know that that number is important. What else? I want you to remind your students to have everything ready the day before the exam, okay? Don't prepare your materials and everything the morning you have to leave for the exam venue, because you get nervous and then you don't find your things, okay? So always tell your students to prepare everything the night before or a couple of days before that. And what is it that they have to have with them, okay? So they have to have a valid photo ID, okay? And it's important that it must not have expired by the day of the exam, okay? This is very, very, very important. So please try to remind this to your students and their families, okay, about the valid ID. What else? Their confirmation of entry, okay? It's important that they have the confirmation of entry because there they have the timetable for each part of the exam. They have the details about the school where they're sitting for. So it's important they have the confirmation of entry. And one other important point about this is that they don't throw it away, okay? Because on the confirmation of entry, they're going to find the details on when they're going to receive their results and where and when they can get the certificate. So it's important that they keep the confirmation of entry after the exam as well. And make sure that your students have all the materials that they're going to need to write, okay, the day of the exam, pens, pencils, erasers, but pay attention to this according to the exam they're taking, because not all exams require students to have pens, for example, okay? And we're going to discuss this in a few minutes, but make sure, okay, that they have all their materials ready before the day of the exam. So these were a couple of things that I wanted you to remind your students. So when you see them before the exam, make sure that you tell them all of this. Now, let's pass on to these items that some of them we're very sure that are not allowed. And some of them, they pose some sort of question, okay? Are they allowed? They're not allowed? So we're going to discuss this. We're going to start with the good ones, okay? The ones that are allowed. So as I said before, the photo ID is allowed on the exam day, and students are supposed to have it on their desks the day of exam, because it will be checked before each paper begins, okay? So they can have their ID, and they're supposed to have their ID with them on their desks. What else is allowed? Okay, so pens, pencils, erasers, pencil sharpeners, highlighters, these items are allowed, okay? But again, we're going to see according to which exam, some of these items, you're not supposed to have them with you, okay? But these elements, students can have them with them the day of the exam. Water. It's very important that our students hydrate, you know, that they drink water, because it's going to be a very long day, all right, the day of the exam. But it has to be water in a clear plastic bottle, okay? So it must have a lid, and it cannot have any kind of label, all right? So this is very important, okay? So water in a clear plastic bottle. And of course, students can have tissues, okay, with them. Sometimes they sneeze or they get something sticky in their hands and they want to remove it, okay? And they don't have tissues, but they are allowed to have tissues, okay? So tell them that that's okay. Now, let's pass on to the bad ones, okay? The ones that are not allowed in the classroom, okay? They're not allowed in the exam day. So tell your students that they can't have any of these. Electronic items, okay? Any electronic items. I chose to illustrate it with a phone, okay, because that's the one that everyone has, but this includes computers, smartwatches, iPads, iPods. Any electronic device is not allowed in the exam room, and is not allowed during the exam day, okay? So please remind this to your students. Another controversial item is correction fluid, okay? For some reason, okay, students keep on bringing correction fluid to the exam day, and it is not allowed, okay, in any exam, in any paper, okay? So please tell your students to remove correction fluid from their materials, from their pencil cases, and tell them not to bring correction fluid the day of the exam, because they will be, if they have it there with them, they will be tempted to use it, and they can't, okay? Wristwatches are not allowed, okay? So please tell your students not to bring watches. There will be a clock inside each exam room, okay? So they will be able to check the time when they're while they're there, okay? So please remind them not to bring wristwatches. And something that is quite obvious, okay? But obviously food and drink is not allowed inside the exam venue, okay? So except for water in a clear plastic bottle, okay? So these are some of the items that are not allowed, okay? So please bear this in mind and tell this to your students. Let's pass on to these little tips for the little ones, all right? So if you teach pre-A1 starters, A1 movers, and A2 flyers, okay, these are the tips for you. So I want to begin with something that is quite important, okay? And it's that for these 3 exams, students are going to need color pencils, okay? And I listed the colors that they need because what usually happens is that students lack one of the colors, okay? And they are, doing the listening, and the voice on the recording says, now color the balloon green. And the kids realize that I don't have green, so what do I do? And they get very, very, very nervous, and they want to ask people and they can't do that, okay? So it's really important that you remind families, okay, that students need to have all these colors, okay? So they can do the exam in a relaxed way, and they can be confident that they have everything they need to do the listening, okay? So it's very important that they have all the colors. They will also need a pencil and an eraser, okay? And as I said before, of course, they can have a pencil sharpener, okay? But it's important that these are the elements that they have to write their answers, okay? What else? In order to keep kids relaxed and confident, okay, remind them that during the listening paper, okay, they will be able to hear each recording twice, okay? It usually happens that sometimes they don't get the answer on the first, recording. And it's fine, it happens, all right? And they think that they won't have a second chance, okay, of listening to that. So please when you practice in class, play the recording twice, okay? So your students get used to this idea of, well, once the recording has finished, it will start again, okay? And when they get to the day of the exam, they will expect that second recording. Starters, movers, and flyers only have a question paper, okay? So this is very important. They write their answers on the question paper given for each part of the exam. They get a question paper for reading and writing. They get a question paper for the listening, okay? And that's where they write their answers. They usually are very used to the kind of activities and how to complete those activities, but sometimes they're not quite sure on how to complete the front page of each question paper, okay? They have to write their name, the center number, and the candidate number. And kids sometimes feel a little bit at lost, okay, when invigilators give them these instructions, right? Write your name here, write the center number, the candidate number. So we thought that a good tip would be to try to train your students, to write their names and center number and candidate number on the question paper. Or at least try to make them, feel familiar with these words, center number, candidate number, okay? Because when the invigilator is giving the instructions, the kids will realize what they have to do, and they will start the exam with a lot of energy, and they will feel confident, okay? Because if they start the exam by asking questions like, where do I write my name? Okay, center number, it's like a mess, okay? And students don't feel very confident there, okay? If they have to start asking a lot of questions. So if you train them on this, okay, that's going to be a very, very nice thing for them to be ready the day of the exam. Okay, so far, so good. I think we have a bunch of tips over here. And now, I would like to discuss this idea of what's going on with the listening, okay? So I'm going to start with this idea of that students will listen to each recording twice, the same way as with young learners in key, preliminary, first, advanced, and proficiency. Each recording is played twice, okay? And please, again, the same thing. If you're practicing with your students, okay, play each recording twice. Even if you have a book that for some reason does not play it twice, okay, you try to do that effort of hitting the play button again, so you repeat it, okay? And they become accustomed to listening once again, and they become accustomed to actually checking the second time that they're listening, okay? So it's important to make our students aware of this. Something else that it's important about the listening is that the voice that gives the instructions, the announcer in the audio for each part of the listening test, okay, will talk in a slower pace and standard accent, okay? I know that you as teachers know this, but sometimes students, especially when they're starting to practice, they don't understand why the person who is giving the instructions is speaking slower. And then when the part of the exam begins, the actors, that are playing the dialogues or the monologues, okay, that is a bit faster, or they have a different accent, okay? So it's good that you explain to your students that this is what happens in the exam, okay? And this is a little tip that goes a little bit beyond the mechanics of the exam, okay? It has to do with how to train your students. Make sure that you expose them, especially when you're teaching first, advanced, and proficiency, expose them to a variety of accents, because from those levels onwards, okay, students will hear different accents, okay? So they don't get surprised if they listen to a Scottish accent in the middle of the exam. So a little tip over there. I thought it was relevant for this. What else? So there's going to be a sound check at the beginning of the listening paper. Students should know about this, that there's going to be a sound check before the listening paper starts, okay? The invigilator will ask if there are any problems, the invigilator will play a little part of the recording to check if everything is okay. And that is the moment to tell the invigilator, okay, if there are any problems. If everything is okay and students give consent, the exam will begin, okay? And once the exam starts, okay, once the invigilator presses play, all right, students, the listening paper has already started and students cannot leave, okay, the room during the listening paper, or even if they finish early, okay, they cannot leave, okay? So this is important that your students know that during the listening paper, they cannot leave. Something that we notice as invigilators is that students are not aware that the announcer on the recording is the one that will give the instructions on when to open the question paper and when the test finishes, okay? These are instructions that are given by the announcer, okay? And it's good that your students know about this, okay? Why? Because they expect the invigilator to tell them when to open the question paper, and that won't happen. It will be the voice on the recording. So tell them to pay attention to the voice on the recording so they know when they can start doing the test. And the last tip on listening, okay? Tell your students that they will have time at the end of the listening paper to transfer their answers to the answer sheet, okay? Why are we telling you this? Sometimes students get the answer on the first try, okay? And they start transferring while the recordings are on. And another speaker starts talking and they miss some parts of the listening. So it's very important that they know that they will have certain amount of time at the end of the listening to transfer their answers, and that they use that time to transfer the answers, because even if they finish early, like I said before, they won't be able to leave, all right? Good. So that's all for listening. Let's pass on to this difference of the question paper and the answer sheet, all right? So I will briefly remind you, okay, of the exams that have a question paper and answer sheet, and in which paper of the exams they have both or only one. So in A2 key and key for schools, students have a question paper and an answer sheet in the reading and writing paper and the listening paper. And if they have an answer sheet, that means that they only need pencil, okay? So whenever you have an answer sheet, you only need pencil. Now, for B1 preliminary and preliminary for schools, okay, students have a question paper and an answer sheet in the reading and listening paper. And as of this year, as of 2020, students in preliminary have a separate writing paper, and they only receive a question paper. They will write their answers there, okay? So in that question paper for the writing, they only have to use pen, okay? The same thing. Whenever you have an answer sheet, it's only a pencil. And for B2 first, C1 advanced, and C2 proficiency, students get a question paper and an answer sheet for reading and use of English and listening. All right. And for the writing, they only get a question paper. So that means that when they get an answer sheet, they have to use pencil. And when they get a question paper, they get to use pen. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the question paper because sometimes students don't feel very confident manipulating it. So they receive a question paper, like I said before, for all written components, okay? And they will be asked to write their name, candidate number, and center number on the front page of the question paper. This will be asked by the invigilator. So try to remind them that they might be asked to write these details on the question paper. And what I really want to point out here is that students can underline, highlight, and write on the question paper. Tell them not to be shy, okay? If they need to underline something, and to work on the question paper, okay, when they're doing the different activities, okay? Mark their answers there, and then you transfer to the answer sheet, all right? It's important also to know that students in the reading in A2 key, reading in preliminary, and reading and use of English in first, advanced, and proficiency, they don't have extra time to transfer answers. So if they have, for example, an hour and 20 minutes for the reading and use of English, that includes the time that they have to transfer answers. So remind this to your students that they need to do everything, okay, during that time, okay? And one last reminder, so everything is clear, okay? In the writing paper for B1 preliminary for schools, B2 first for schools, C1 advanced, and C2 proficiency, students write their answers in pen, okay? For that paper, it's the answers go in pen. Now, when we have an answer sheet, and this is the most important thing, please remind your students, answer sheets must be completed in pencil, all right? It's important that you know that everything that goes in the answer sheet must be in pencil. They even have the instructions on the answer sheet. So if they are not sure the day of the exam, they have it there, okay? So remind your students to read the instructions as well, all right? What kind of pencil? This is something that we are usually asked, okay? We recommend HB pencils, right, or B pencils, because they're very easy to erase in case students have made a mistake and they need to change their answers, okay? So we recommend these pencils. And something very important about answer sheets is the way in which it has to be completed, okay? So whenever students have to write something, it has to be in block letters. And whenever they have to choose an option, they have to shade, okay, the circles to choose their answers, okay? I'm showing you right now, they have to shade, not cross, not a tick, okay? Not anything that looks like a decoration. No, it has to be colored inside that little circle. And another important point about the answer sheet is that it will come with the name of the student printed, okay? And then they will be asked to sign, okay? So the invigilator will tell them that if their name is correct, they will have to sign the answer sheet, okay? And what we want you to tell your students is to, make them be aware of this word, of sign the answer sheet, or sign in where it says candidate signature, okay? Because sometimes they're not familiar with those words. So they don't know what they have to do or where. So it's important that you tell them about this, and that they have to sign in pencil, okay? Because everything that goes in on the answer sheet has to be in pencil, okay? Even though we are used to signing in pen, everything on the answer sheet must be in pencil, including the signature. Okay, so to round this session, because I'm running out of time, but this is like the top tip of all tips. I would like you to remember, and you as teachers, the days before the exam, okay, even throughout the whole year, try to foster this encouraging and reassuring atmosphere, okay? The days before the exam, students, start to get a little bit nervous, okay? Maybe they have been very, very confident throughout the whole preparation, but the days before they get a bit anxious, nervous. So you are the person who has to encourage them and reassure them that everything will be fine, okay? And that the exam day has to be a pleasant experience where they can show everything they have learned and everything they know, okay? That is the moment, okay? Of course, it's okay to feel nervous. It's only natural. It's an exam. But if you're there reassuring them that everything will be okay and they will succeed in the exam, everything will be fine, right? So that's all. Thank you so much for getting up early and being on the first session of the day. I'd like to thank everyone at Buenos Aires Open Center once again for allowing me to present in this seminar. So that's all. Thank you so much. And I will give it back to Monica.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Belén. That was really interesting and very useful. It will be of great help when we are preparing our Cambridge English qualifications. Well, coming up next at 10, Mariano Quinterno with his presentation, All for One and One for All, project-based learning. If you have already signed up for this presentation, you should have received an email with a link to access the session. If not, you will now find the link in the chat box. So join us in a couple of minutes, and I hope you really enjoy Mariano's presentation.